By the end of today's episode, you'll know all about what high quality, legitimate agents care about when it comes to signing actors. Welcome to the Actor's Career Compass, where we help aspiring screen actors find high-quality auditions, sign with great agents, and book major roles in legit productions. I'm your host, Martin Benson, and today I have the opportunity to interview Marc Soper, the owner of Carolina Talent, an agency based in North Carolina that represents actors all across the United States. Some of the things that we discuss include red flags that agents will spot in your submission and how to avoid them, common reasons that busy agents might be unable to reply or consider your submission, and how to have a successful relationship with an agent so that they submit you more and push harder for you to get in the room. And of course, a lot more. Ready to dive in? So, Marc Soper is a SAG-AFTRA actor and Army veteran who began his acting journey as a film extra in Chicago. He served 21 years in the military, including combat in Desert Storm. After retiring, he returned to acting. He built up many credits and he became a full-time talent agent, eventually taking over Carolina Talent with his family in 2016. Thanks so much for being here, Marc.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I've got a number of questions for you,
Yes,
but
sir.
can you start off by telling us a little bit about your background and what you enjoy most about working as an agent?
Okay. Yeah. I got the acting bug or got the desire to be involved in the industry as a kid.
Hmm.
Um, I was extra in the Blues Brothers and a movie that Sean Penn did called Bad Boys. So not the Will Smith and the other guy, Bad Boys, but this is Bad Boys with Sean Penn.
Hmm.
The problem was, which happens with most people, my parents didn't support my choice of wanting to be an actor.
Yeah.
So I went in the military, but I still did a lot of stuff acting wise in the military, kind of became a spokesperson. And during the process, my son, who at age 13 had heard some of the stories, he's like, oh, well, I want to be an actor model. So he signed with Carolina Talent in 2000. And then through that process of working with Carolina Talent, when I retired, I signed with them as an actor in 2005. But then from 2005 to 2009, I just got the feeling that I really didn't like the things that Carolina Talent was doing, how they were operating, doing stuff with actors, models, stuff of that nature. So I went in and explained this to them, and their comment was, well, if you don't like what we're doing, why don't you come and work for us and show us how to do it? Um, so I told him, I said, well, I'm a sales guy. That's what I was doing in my full-time job. Outside of the military, I was in sales. And then, so I went in, I said, look, your TV film division is nothing. So let me start by being the agent for the TV film. And they're like, okay, but, how much money do you want? And I said, look, I believe in my process. All I want to be paid is commission. I said, I don't want any salary, nothing. I'll take straight commission off of people that I book. And basically, the first 6 months, my wife was like, are we going to have to, cash in our 401ks and are we going to have to sell the house? Oh my God, what are you doing to us? And I told her, I said, just believe in me, believe in what I'm doing. And probably 2 months later, it started to happen. Started working with casting directors, started booking talent, started bringing in money. And I would say within a year and a half later, the TV film division, which was actually bringing in maybe only 10% of the revenue of Carolina Talent, was now bringing in 80%.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So, and I really fell in love with being an agent and, talking to actors, talking to models, and really kind of giving them the real deal on what this industry is about. Not sugarcoating it, not telling them they're going to be a star. Just saying, hey, look, this is what it is. It's tough business. These are the things you got to do. These are the things how you got to do it. So that's what we started doing, or that's what I started doing. And then somewhere around 2012, my wife lost her job And she's like, "Oh my God, I'm 50 years old. What do I do?" And I'm like, "Well, come work at Carolina Talent, until you find a job."
Hmm.
So she started as an agent, just kind of helping out, doing the things that I couldn't get to, or the smaller projects. And next thing I know, she's like, "Oh my God, I love this job. Is there any way?" So I said, "I don't know. Let me talk to the person running it." So the person running it's like, "Yeah, we can always use another agent." So me and my wife started working together as agents in 2012, and we kind of just realized that one, we either needed to go and start our own agency because things at Carolina Talent weren't being done the way we wanted to be done, and they weren't to our standards and our ethics.
Yeah.
So we put a plan together to either open our own agency or take over Carolina Talent, and obviously we ended up taking over Carolina Talent. And that happened in 2016. My son, who is also an agent, who was a actor model, went up to New York, signed with an agent up there, did all kinds of stuff. He ended up coming back and doing the same thing I did. Became an agent, felt like he was better at that than being an actor. So he started with us, and we've owned the company now since 2016.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, I have a couple of follow-up questions for that.
Okay. Yeah, I know that was a lot. I'm sorry. Okay.
No, that's okay. That's me like pounding away on my keyboard here if you heard it.
Yeah.
But so you mentioned that there is some stuff that you didn't like about Carolina Talent, and I'm just curious, from an agent's perspective, what were some of those types of things? And like for an actor who might be listening to this, right? Like, what are things that they might want to think about? Oh, maybe this agency that I'm considering isn't that good or whatever.
Right, right. Well, no agent should charge you any money to represent you.
Hmm.
There should be no fee to be represented. There should be no upfront money. That's not to say that you don't have to pay for a photo shoot. That's not to say you don't have to pay for comp cards or headshots. But if somebody tells you, "Hey, we want to sign you, we want to represent you, but it's going to cost $1,500 for us to do that," that get out of there.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing, which this is kind of it's a gray, tricky area, because there are some agencies out there that do it on the up and up, and on the way it should be done, and then there's other agents that do it just to make money. So if an agent says, "Hey, I looked at your stuff, and we like your look, we like your skill, but we don't think it's quite to where we need it to be. So we need you to take some workshops." So some agents do require you to take workshops with them if they're going to represent you.
Hmm.
And of course, you have to pay for that. I always tell talent, if somebody's asking you to pay for something that's going to help develop you, if it's a reasonable amount, and it's a legitimate class, or it's a legitimate workshop being taught by a legitimate instructor, then that's worth it.
Hmm.
But if it's like, "Hey, we want to charge you $500, we're going to put you through a 3 week, 4 week, 5 week workshop, and by the way, Joe Blow that we found on the street, homeless, he's going to be the one teaching it." Make sure the teacher has credentials.
Yeah.
So those are the things I don't like. And not to bash conventions, but a lot of talent get involved in these conventions that cost thousand, 1,500, 3,000, sometimes $5,000. And honestly, if they were to have just kept that money and done some training themselves, found out some, local acting classes and stuff, and worked on their craft that way, they probably would have maybe only spent $500, and they would at least be ready to see an agent.
Hmm.
Um, Now I'm going to flip the side of that, because there are some good things about conventions. Um, if you don't have the ability to find agents, if you don't have the ability to do stuff, these conventions do allow talent to meet multiple agents in one day.
Hmm.
And most of the agents that are at these convention kinds of things are legitimate agents. So you have to cost weigh the benefit and figure out what really works for you. I would say if you go to a convention and they give you a training program that's anywhere from 5 weeks to 3 months, and then you get to go somewhere and see all these agents, I would then say, if it's $1,500, that may be worth it. But if you start talking 5,000 or above 1,500 bucks, and I think it can be done for less than 1,500 bucks, but I'm not going to get into, that cost thing. Just if people are going to do that kind of stuff, make sure they're getting what they're paying for.
Yeah.
And make sure that the instructors and the people doing the classes, that they have legitimate, resources, and that they have the credits to be teaching those classes. They're not just somebody that was hired that looks pretty and can speak in front of a crowd.
Hmm. I as you were speaking earlier, this is actually an interesting question that I am not 100% aware of the answer to in regards to commissions and payments to different agents.
Mhm.
Obviously some agents will get paid a certain salary and a commission on top of that. Some just get paid commission, but I'm just curious, like is there a sort of because actors will often think like, oh, if I'm doing 10% commission to this agency or 15 or 20%, is that all going directly to the agent, or is the agency that they're working off of taking a portion of that? Just like if you want to explain a little bit about that to actors so that they kind of understand almost like where the money is going and why it's like, agents aren't necessarily getting rich off of taking a
Okay.
certain percentage.
Yeah. So, it's and that's really a tricky question to answer because each agency is going to kind of have their own policies. They're going to have their own structure of how the pay gets out. But what a talent can understand is this. If they are doing SAG jobs, there is a plus 10% agent fee that gets paid on that SAG job. That 10% then goes to the agency. Now, how the agency splits that 10% up, if they take a portion of it and then give a portion to the agent that did the booking, that's going to be specific to the agent, okay, or to the agency. For us, because we're the owners of the agency and because we're the ones that, do the jobs, it's me, my wife, and my son. When we get a 10% agency commission off a job, if my son's the one that booked the job, he gets that 10%.
Mm,
If my wife's the one that books the job, she takes the 10%. If I booked it, I take the 10%. Now, in that, because we are running an agency, there is a small portion of that we will use to keep the agency going. And
yeah.
it's really up to me, my wife, and my son. If we say, hey, you know what, we need this much money for the agency, we need these bills to be paid. I'm
Yeah.
not going to take my commission on this one.
Mhm.
So that's how that works. Now, if it's a non-union job, this is where it gets tricky. So on a non-union job, most of your agencies are going to take a plus 20 that they get from the client. So let's say I'm working with Belk and Belk says, hey, we want to hire a model. We're willing to pay $100 for the model. We're going to pay the plus 20 agency fee.
Mhm.
So what happens in that sense is that 20% agency fee goes straight to the agency. But we then take a 20% commission from the talent. So instead of the talent making that 100, they're going to make $80.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, on SAG jobs, if the talent is SAG, there's only the plus 10.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So that plus 10 that is given by production is the only commission. If the talent is SAG and they're working a SAG job, that's the only commission that the agency gets or the agent. Now, in our case, not all agents do this. Some do, some don't. It's kind of a gray area. But if a talent is non-union and they work a SAG job, we take the 20% from them. Now, when a talent becomes SAG eligible and they work a SAG job, then we only take 10% from them.
Yeah.
But if they're SAG and they do a SAG job, we don't take anything from them. We just take the plus 10.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It definitely makes
Yeah.
sense. And there
Yeah.
obviously there's complications, and I'm sure with different agencies, it's
Right.
kind of based on what's in the contract. But
Right.
I think that's helpful for actors to understand that it's not always the same percentages. It really depends
Yeah.
on the job, the agent. A lot of things can change. So just because you see a slightly different percentage structure, it doesn't mean that an agency is like a scam or something like
Right.
that.
What and what I would tell talent is always make sure you have a contract signed stating what the breakdowns are, what they're going to take, what they're not going to take.
Hmm.
Um, there's a lot of talent that will come to me and say, "Oh, I have a non-exclusive with this agent, and or manager," and I'm like, "Okay, great." I said, "What's their percentage? Are they expecting to take money when I book it?" Well, I don't know. I'm like, "Well, don't you have a signed contract?" No, I'm not exclusive. I'm going, "Oh my goodness, why do you not have this in writing? You need to have in writing what they expect from you." So yeah.
I have one other side question,
Okay.
really quick, because you mentioned that you brought the revenue up from what, like 10 to 20%, all
10%.
the way up to 80%
Yeah.
for film and TV. And my question is, what were some of the things that you think contributed to that success that made you successful as an agent?
All right. So this is kind of me patting myself on the back. But no, what it comes down to is at the time I started working with Carolina Talent, the reputation of Carolina Talent was not good.
Mm,
Okay. There were things that were being done that were considered scamish.
yeah.
There were things that were being done that were scamish. Um, and I stopped that.
Hmm.
And I also went and called and met with every casting director I knew in the Southeast.
Wow.
And I asked to have sit down meetings with them. And, I asked them, why are you not calling in Carolina Talent? What is your beef with Carolina Talent?
Mhm.
And I let them basically give me a laundry list of things that they didn't like and
What
things
were
that were
some
being done.
what were some of the things that they said?
Charging talent for photo shoots, charging talents for workshops, and the people doing the workshops don't have any credits. Charging people to go to conventions, and the convention may only cost $1,000, and you're charging them $5,000.
Yeah.
Um, the having them do marketing material every year when their marketing material it didn't need to be updated. So, when somebody has marketing material still left on the wall and it's 6 months and you go up and you throw all their marketing material in trash and call them up and say they need a new photo shoot because their marketing material's gone.
Hmm.
That's unethical.
Yeah.
Um, so things like that's what was being done. But the strongest thing was with my military background and the just going into these casting directors and basically pleading and just saying, look, you know me from being an actor, you know me from coming into audition. So you have a sense of my morality, you have a sense of how I do things. I said, give me 1 year, 1 year. Trust me for 1 year. And if I don't change this around, if I don't change things, if you don't see a change, then you can quit using us.
That's awesome. I love it. It's such a such a great story. I appreciate you sharing it.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Um, well, I want to move now into some just sort of strategy related things that
Yeah.
are going to be useful for actors.
Yeah.
Like for instance, one question I have here is how often do actors reach out to your company for representation, and what are some of the common reasons that you're actually unable to either reply or take a meeting with them?
Sure. We get anywhere from 10 to 20 a week.
Wow.
Just reaching out.
Hmm.
And it could be through email, it could be through phone call, it could be through our website. Um, so the things, the things that make me not take a meeting. Well, first of all, I will tell you this: the number on the website is our office line. Okay, so like we don't have our personal numbers on the website.
Yeah.
If you've got our personal number, then you've gotten it somewhere else, and that's fine. I'm not saying don't call that, but the majority of people they call the office line.
Mhm.
Okay. Now I'm gonna tell a little secret, which may hurt me, but so on our office message, we basically just say, "This is Carolina Talent. We are not accepting any talent at this time. If you'd like to leave a message, please do."
Mhm.
Honestly, before we put that message on there, we were getting 50 to 60
Wow.
calls a week. So that's kind of wiped out the people who just they're really not, they don't have the intention. They woke up and they're like, oh, somebody said I could be a model in the grocery store. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna call Caroline Talent and see if I can be a model. Um, So basically, if somebody leaves a message, no matter how they leave a message, I will always return a phone message.
Hmm.
Even if I'm not interested, I will always call back and say, "Hey, you left a message." I'll ask some questions, and then if they're right, I'll give them another way to send us some stuff. If
Hmm.
they're not right for us, I'll just say, at this time we're not accepting talent, or you're not at the level we need you to be in order for us to represent you.
Yeah. What this is definitely something that's probably on people's minds right now is what is that level? You're not at the level for us to represent you. I'm sure actors are thinking at.
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, you've got to have the basics done. So
Hmm.
the basics are you have to have headshot photos.
Yeah.
Um, you don't have to have hard copies anymore. I mean, 99% of everything now we're doing digitally through the computer.
Hmm.
I think on a rare occasion now, I think once a month we may actually get a live audition where somebody has to go in and audition live. So that's becoming a rarity, but it still does happen. So, I would say, be prepared to print out a headshot,
Hmm.
at least have 10 on hand somewhere. And then it's just being on the websites. You got to be on Actors Access. You got to be on casting networks.
Yeah.
Those are the two main ones. Okay. If they're not on those, I'm not even going to speak to them.
Yeah.
Okay. You're not ready if you're not on those. There are a couple other websites you can get on. They're the minor ones. 800 Casting. I think there's another one out there that's called Backstage.
Hmm.
We don't like Backstage as much. They're not really friendly with agents,
Yeah.
and also they don't verify a lot of their stuff. So it's hard to work in that.
Yeah.
But it is one of those that a lot of actors who don't have agents, they use it. And
Yes.
the only thing I would tell them is, in using that, you have to do your due diligence and make sure it's not a scam.
Yeah.
Because Backpage, and I'm not bashing Backpage. It's just Backpage doesn't do some of the verifying, so you have to take on that role of anything that you go after.
Yeah.
Um, and then you've got to have a resume. Um, you know, Granted, I know some people are starting out and they're like, "Well, I'm just starting." Well, I know, but there's community colleges. You can get on websites. You can go to Facebook. You can start out doing extra work, anything. But I just need some sort of credits. Whether it's modeling, whether it's acting. And I will tell you this: the younger you are, if you're under the age of 18, I'm more apt to look at you and take you on without credits.
Yeah.
But once you start hitting that 16 and above age, then I'm really looking for credits. And I will tell you, Martin, the biggest thing is if they don't have an actor's access. Actor's access is the first thing I look for.
Yeah.
So when people send me stuff, and people send me stuff and they won't send their actor's access link, and I'll respond back, "Hey, I love everything I'm seeing, but do you have an actor's access?" "Oh yeah, can I have the link?" So once I can get in and see that, once I can get in and see their casting networks, even if they may not have a lot of credits, they may have something in there, a video of, where they just made a video of them doing something, a monologue, a voiceover, whatever. That could put me in the thing where now I'm like, oh, I'm interested.
Yeah. Excellent. No, this all lines up and makes total sense because in the podcast episodes that I do, I talk a lot about these things. The
Right.
actors access casting networks, those are the two primary ones.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
actors do have the backstage, but backstage is not necessarily one that many agents like to be involved with. You have a number of things. I mean, the clips that show the acting ability
Yes.
is critical. If you have a reel, that's awesome, but it bare minimum some sort of like monologue and dialogue with a
Right.
self-tape setup that looks
Right.
professional, right?
Right.
And then obviously in those clips, you want your performance to be believable and real,
Right.
and
Right.
strong, interesting to watch and everything.
And,
So,
and I always tell talent, the order in which the reels are important, monologue is always going to be the least favored. Then any student films or independent films,
mhm.
then any real commercials, then TV, film. So, as you progress, those reels should progress too. As you get credits, as you get stuff on. So if you don't have anything, you definitely need to have a monologue. If you have a monologue and then all of a sudden you do a commercial, I would say, well, leave the monologue up, but add the commercial up as a commercial reel.
Yeah.
If all of a sudden you get like a TV show or you do a film, or even if you do a student film, or let's say you do a small independent film and you can get footage from that, then that's when you're going to put that up and you're going to drop that monologue.
Yes.
Get rid of that monologue.
I did a podcast episode for anybody who's listening to this. I'll try to find the number and read it out loud at the very end in the outro of this. But literally, it's called the clip scoring system, and it's exactly this stuff, like monologues with level what I call like level 3 acting, just like a
Right.
standard scene is
Right.
like the lowest, but then a monologue with like level 4 acting where it's really emotional and interesting to watch. That's stronger, but then stronger than that is an actual clip from something. So like people should listen to that because it's pretty useful to kind of be like, I want to add up as many points as possible, but
Right.
only keep like 4 or 5 clips at most
Yep.
on my profile.
Right. Well, and I will adjust to that. So you have some people who can do a lot of different character looks and
Yes.
perform a, so sometimes, I do tell people, look, if you've got a strong, police officer, military, government, look, and you want to do a clip, and then you want to do a homeless guy, you
And
want to do
special
a drug guy.
skills too, like if you could
Right.
juggle or sing or
Yep.
whatever, and you have
Yeah.
different accents,
Yeah.
those are great to have extra clips of that.
Right. And I always tell people just make those the clips. Make those the 7, 10 second clips. You don't need the full
No.
minute, reel on those kinds of things. But yeah, you are right. You should keep like a main four.
Hmm. Awesome. Yeah. No, that's actually an interesting idea for a podcast I should do is talking specifically about those short little clips
Yeah.
that kind of demonstrate the special skills. I like that. Now, my next question for you is so out of all these things that we talked about, is there sort of, well, this is kind of like one of my last questions. Is there anything else that actors should be thinking about that we haven't yet covered that you might be like, is there anything else that's important to focus on before they try to get signed?
Yes. Um, be professional. Everybody that starts to get into this industry or whatever, they kind of they don't look at it as a real job, or they don't look at it as a real profession. It's something that they're doing for fun, whatever.
Mm.
But this is my living. This is the only way I make money.
Yeah.
So this is a profession and a job for me. And I know a lot of people that we represent, they do this and they do something else.
Mhm.
But we do have some that, this is all they do. So it's more for the people below that, but there are some people who are professional actors, that's all they do, whatever. My thing is, whenever you're talking to agents, managers, whenever you're reaching out to casting, production, be professional. Return the phone calls, be professional on the phone calls. If you set a meeting with somebody, do the meeting regardless.
Yeah.
One of my biggest pet peeves is when a talent calls me and we go through the whole process of setting up the meeting. I go through their stuff, we have conversations back and forth, we set a meeting, and then I get a phone call. Well, most of the time I don't even get a phone call. I just get an email saying, "Hey, I've signed with another agent." Okay, so why did you set the meeting with me? If you knew, and my whole thing is, if a talent came to me and said, "Hey, look, I know we had a phone call at 2 o'clock." He gets on the phone call. He says, "Hey, Mark, look, I was talking to an agent yesterday, and I really liked them, and I've already signed with them." I would be like, "Great, that's awesome. Thank you for letting me know." But to just either blow off the phone call or just send an email, "Hey, I've signed it with another agent," before you ever have a chance to even talk with me, that to me is unprofessional. Um, and then the other thing I would tell talent is, do understand this is a business. And may I get upset if you decide to leave me? Yeah, but I'm upset because you're probably a good talent and I didn't do my job, and for some reason we're parting ways. But have the decency to either send me an email or call me before you just disconnect from the website, and ghost me. It's just like dating. You don't want to be ghosted. So don't ghost. So don't ghost an agent. Don't ghost a manager. Have a conversation with them. And I would even tell talent, always. Sometimes talent does not take the time to find out what's really going on. Like they'll sit there 6 months and not get an audition, and then all of a sudden they'll leave the agency. Why did you not call the agent? Why did you not call the agency and say, hey, it's been 2 months. I haven't had an audition from you. What's going on? Is there something I'm missing? Is there something I can do? I tell talent the best thing to do, regardless, is reach out to your agent once a month. Have some form of communication with your agent once a month. It may not be a long thing, but just, hey, reaching out to you, hadn't heard from you in a week. Just want to make sure everything's okay. Bam, that's it. That's going to at least spark the thing, because the agent may be like, oh man, that's right. I wanted to call him because his pictures are 5 years old, and his reels are old, and we need to update, and I haven't been submitting them because none of this is updated.
Yeah.
The other thing, as a talent, and this was the big change that I made at Carolina Talent, in stressing to the talent, as the agent, I work for you, the talent. It's not the other way around. The talent doesn't work for the agent.
Hmm.
I work for the talent. I'm trying to get you the job. The only way we get money is if I do my job and I get you booked. And with that, so talent should be able to call an agent and say, hey, can I get a submission report, or can I see what you've kind of done for me for the last month? And the agent shouldn't have any problem sending that along. And then the talent should use that to kind of zero in. Oh, hey, I see you submitted me for Feldstein Paris 20 times, and we haven't had an audition with them. You know what? They're doing a workshop next week. I'm going to get in that workshop, get my face in front of them, that kind of stuff. But it also allows the talent to see what we're submitting them on and be like, hey, I notice like everything you're submitting me on is a police officer. I have hair down to my shoulder. How can I be a police officer? I mean, and that's a very exaggerated example, but it just could be that maybe I'm submitting you for roles, like the soccer mom. If you see as a talent that you're being submitted for roles that maybe you don't feel like you'd be comfortable doing, or you don't feel like you really embody,
Hmm.
that's when you have a talk with the agent. That could be why you're not getting the roles or the auditions.
Excellent. No, this makes a lot of sense. I actually did a pod. I had to do a whole podcast episode, and I'll try to find that number as well on how to ask for a submissions report, because a lot of actors are afraid to do it because,
Hey,
as you could probably guess, some agencies really don't like that, and for whatever reason. But I love your sort of whole approach to the agency and how you sort of were like, hey, we're going to turn this around by going out, refreshing our reputation by speaking directly to people, and then focusing on, doing everything the right way so that we can attract better, higher quality talent who can then go and book bigger roles. And it's
right.
like you rebuilt the agency from the ground up. It's like awesome. I love it.
I tried to, and like I said, my wife is to credit to a lot of that, because she's the one, when she started working there, she's like, Mark, we either need to go and make our own agency, or we need to take this one over and turn it around completely.
Yeah. That's
So
that's
yeah,
awesome.
and
Well,
I mean, I don't know who, if I can tell a story real quick that kind
yeah,
of.
yeah. And if there's anything else that you want to share with listeners as we get ready to wrap
So
it up.
there's an interview out there with Matthew McConaughey, and he's talking about his agent and how, when he called his agent up and he said, "Look, I'm done. I don't want to do rom coms anymore." And the agent's like, "What do you mean you don't want to do rom coms anymore? That's you're $1 million actor, and you're bringing in $1 million with us on rom coms."
Mhm.
And Matthew said, "Look, I want to change my image. I just don't want to do that anymore." And his agent said, "Okay, you got it." And Matthew said to his agent, now this is the agent, not the agency. He said, "Well, don't you need to talk to somebody about that? Don't you need to tell somebody that I'm not doing this?" And he goes, "No." He goes, "I'm your agent. I work for you. If you don't want to do rom-coms anymore, we're not doing rom-coms anymore. I'll help you rebrand. But he also told him, this isn't going to be easy. And if in the interview, Matthew McConaughey says he went almost 2 years without booking anything or seeing auditions because everybody saw him as the rom-com guy.
Yeah.
And they were sending it. They were still calling him in for that. He was getting direct calls. Hey, we're going to make this movie with Meg Ryan, and we want you to be in it or whatever. And he's like, no. And the agent was turning it down and not even sending it to him. So he went like 2 years without, and he's like, oh my God, is my acting career over? And then, he started getting some auditions for non-rom-coms, more dramatic, more comedy. And then of course the Dallas Buyers Club came out. And, I think the one Dirty Joe came out, stuff like that. And, he finally got known for doing something other than rom-coms, and he hasn't gone back. But, I kind of base when I heard that and I saw that, I had already started to like do that kind of stuff, work for my talent. I work for you. You tell me what you want to do. This is how I'm going to promote you. But that solidified that my philosophy and what I wanted to do with the agency was the right way to go.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I love it. Well, thank you for your excellent work in the industry and also for your military service.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Do you have any contact info, or how can actors who are looking to potentially get in touch reach out to you guys?
Sure. You can generically do it through our website, but I don't recommend that because doing it through our website, you have to just write things out. You can't put attachments in. You can't put links or anything like that. So I would not do it through the website, but if you have no other way, you can just go to the website and hit submissions. Otherwise, you can send an email to carolinatalent.submissions@gmail.com. And that will come directly to us. Put in your name, your age, a headshot resume, links to any websites that you're on. Actors Access, Casting Networks, 800 Casting, Backstage. If you're not on any of those websites, but you have a YouTube channel or an Instagram thing that's going to, give us some idea what you can do, you can always do that. The office phone line is 704-332-3218. Leave a detailed message. Somebody will get back to you. But yeah, that's the ways to contact us.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. This was excellent. I love it.
Yeah, not a problem.
Well, thanks for listening. Now, 2 specific episodes that I recommended during this interview to check out include episode number 130, Stop Using Weak Clips in Your Acting Profile. That's all about that clip scoring system that we had discussed. And then also episode number 105, which is how to request a submissions report without offending your agent. Okay, check it out again. It's episode number 130 and episode number 105 on the Actor's Career Compass. And if you found the podcast helpful, I would greatly appreciate if you could leave a review, as it helps other actors find this podcast as well. All you have to do is go to ratethispodcast.com/actor success. And lastly, if you're interested in working with me one-on-one in my career coaching program, you can learn more about how that works on my website, martinbenson.com. I'd love to speak with you, and we'll see if you'd be a good fit for the coaching program. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.